your growth here is based on merit. It's not based on tenure. That's our whole goal, is that you put people in the position to succeed, and you give them all of the information and focus it to what people need to be doing in the first 60 days, 90 days, 180 days, 360 days, that kind of stuff. And so since then, we've been able to kind of say, all right, this is what you guys should focus on overall. But if you want to take what you should know in 360 days and learn it in 180 days and develop that.
Hey everyone, it's time for Design Development, your hub to learn direct from top professionals in real estate design, development, and construction. I'm your host, Renz Hayes, founding partner at H&O, lifelong learner, obsessed with high-powered organizations and the leaders that guide them. If this is your first time on the show, thank you so much for tuning in. And if you're a returning guest, can't thank you enough. Let's get to the show. Please join me in welcoming George. George, thanks for joining us.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Renz.
I've really enjoyed getting to know you, Jason, Parker, everyone on the ARCO New England team over the last few years. I'd honestly consider you guys friends at this point, and it's great to be able to work with people you enjoy spending time with. So I appreciate that. For those that don't know you, could you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you guys at ARCO New England are up to?
Sure. So ARCO New England, the group that myself and Jason came and opened in 2015, part of a broader company, ARCO National Construction, based out of St. Louis. Design build general contractor. Been doing this for 30 years. ARCO has since 92. And our model is that we focus on design build, industrial manufacturing, but predominantly design build in everything that we do. So we like to get involved extremely early with developers, owners, design consultants, whoever it may be, and then manage the entire process all the way through. So whether it be site entitlements, all the way through site layouts and flow across the building site or across the project site, all the way through actually finalizing the design with the owner, managing that entire design, every facet of it, architectural, structural, MEPs, refrigeration if we get into a cold storage, and then go and build it. And then we're manage that entire process all the way until we hand over the keys to the owner, and then try to go do a next one.
It works. Whatever the model is, it works, right? So to give everyone a sense of scale, ARCO launched in 1992, and they work across the country. So how many offices do you guys have now?
Across the corporation now, I think we have over 33 offices.
Over 33 offices, and your revenue is about what?
This year we'll do all the companies combined, about $5.5 billion.
$5.5 billion. So that's a 30-year run to $5.5 billion in design build work, which is pretty special. And ARCO New England is one of the newer branches, but also one of the highest performing. Is that right?
It looks that way.
It looks that way. Well, I'll say it. And when did you guys launch the ARCO New England branch?
We moved up here middle of 18. So we Jason and I got offered a position to come up here. We were doing work up here as a national traveling contractor for years and years and years, and have been pretty successful. And myself and Jason got offered the opportunity to move up here towards the end of 17. And by the time we finally got everything arranged, office space located, and apartments and everything like that, we were up here full time starting in July of 18.
Yeah, and that's Jason Grant is your principal and partner up here at ARCO New England.
That's right. Yeah. Tag team it from the get-go. So
let's talk a little bit about how did that opportunity come to be? You guys are obviously young go-getters. I'm sure you were successful in everything you did in your career. Did you recognize the opportunity? Were they kind of putting a flyer out there across the company saying we need to get a presence up in New England? Who's willing to take it on? And you kind of took advantage of the opportunity. Like, how did that all come to be?
Yeah, it's a great question, and really it was kind of. Myself and Jason both started as interns and made our way through the company. So by the time it was call it 2015, we're both full-time, have a couple projects that we're working on. We worked for, call it 3 years, under a couple senior project managers, start running our own work for a couple of years. And by, into 2017, early 2018, we got approached by our boss at the time. He's since retired, Jim Keevan, and pretty much said, hey, we feel like ARCO could really benefit from having boots on the ground in New England, and specifically Massachusetts, Connecticut, those two areas specifically. And so we got offered, and they said, we'd like for you two to move up there together and initially just run work up there, get to know the sub-market, the design market, develop relationships with developers, end users, all of that. And so we were approached ourselves, myself and Jason, we joke that we were the two dumb enough ones to say yes to going up there. But
It's
both
not
of
so
us
bad up here.
were, he had just gotten married and I was engaged and about to we were going to get married in June of 18. And so we're both like, hey, we just need a couple of hours. We literally got asked this like Friday afternoon, and Jim, you guys don't know Jim, but Jim was like the most straightforward person you'll ever meet. And his answer was, well, is it yes or no? And it's like, well, hey, I have a fiance. I just need to confirm with her that it's okay that we move across the country and start our life out there. So the four of us, myself and Jason and our fiancés at the time, we all sat down like that Friday night and had dinner at our house and said, do we want to try this? And so, yeah, we all sat down and said, let's try it. Worst case is we were out there a couple years, it doesn't work, and we move back, and we still have a good job at a good company. And so we said, let's do it. And so pretty incredible growth. I mean, since everything was like, I'd never even been up north of DC, so I'd never even been up here. Said yes that Monday, and then by a couple months later, we came up here in October and did all the touristy stuff, went and saw Newport, went and saw Fenway, and stayed at Long Wharf Marriott and try to kind of see the nicer parts of everything. And then a couple months later, we came back up and like looked at apartments and everything else. And so yeah, pretty quick. But to answer your original question, we didn't know the growth potential up here. I think a lot of our bosses that put us in an incredible position, they saw it more than we saw it just kind of at the beginning of our career. Now that we're up here, I mean, and we've been able to realize a lot of it, couldn't have put us in a better position, myself and Jason, to grow the business, grow, personally, grow professionally.
Yeah, it is a great market and what a great opportunity. So when you were asked to come up here, was it through the lens of, was your role at the time a project manager? What was your role?
Yeah, as project managers initially, yeah. I mean, future business leaders, but originally it was go up there. You guys still don't know. You still don't know how to run the most complicated, toughest projects. Go learn. And so we got a lot of help. Originally was just purely you need to know ARCO's standard procedures better. So go run work to learn that.
Yeah, makes a ton of sense. And so right off the bat, obviously there's the conversation like you're going to go out there to run work. And it sounds like you were doing some work up here as a company already. So you had existing stuff. And then it's like start to build those relationships so we can scale. Did you have like set goals right out of the gate? Like go run these jobs, but also try to drive new work. And if you're successful in doing that, there's the career opportunity, or was it you guys came out here, executed, and then were rewarded with you guys are now principals and head of the New England office?
Yeah, I mean that was always the end goal. Is that we were trying to expedite our career, both of our careers, to become shareholders as quickly as possible. I mean that's our ARCO as an entrepreneurial company. The spirit of an entrepreneurial company really puts people in the position that the harder you work and the more successful you are on your own projects and everything else, the quicker you'll move up to the company. So that was the end goal, but originally it was come up here, run projects as project managers, be a part of the hiring process for project managers that you guys are going to hire and manage in your office. So we got involved early on as hiring Colleen Clark, she was our best hire we'll probably ever have in our business, and she's our office manager. Great. Does everything for us and is so incredibly helpful and just amazing at her job. So we literally were embarrassed to interview her to begin with at our office space in Southborough because we moved up there in July, met Colleen in, I don't even know, call it August. And, if we would have brought her back to her office, we would have had like 7 offices that had no furniture. And then mine and Jason's office both had fold-up tables with like hotspots, and that's all we had. And so that was really when they brought us up. They said, "Go run the work. Let's hire the people. We'll be a big part of the hiring process." Our immediate boss is Chris Wilson, who has done amazing, and he's been promoted to CEO of the company of ARCO Holdings, a $1.5 billion entity. And then Brandon Lemons, who got promoted to COO and manages operations for our entire $1.5 billion entity. So those guys both really helped us originally and said, you guys be boots on the ground, meet with these people originally. We'll all 4 sit down and interview them together or however that may be. And so that was kind of the original part. But yeah, it was be project managers, learn the way, and then our eventual goal was that we were managing the office rather than just running work, and kind of where we're at today.
I think it's a good segue into Arco's culture and their ability to retain, attract talent, develop talent, and retain talent. I think it comes down to aligned incentives, and they really compensate well. But a lesson I like to share is anytime you're striving for something in your career, right? Like, let's take your example. You're project manager, you have an opportunity to run an office. It's when you go out there, it's try to set an expectation or a goal and get buy-in from your company that if I achieve X, can I achieve partner or principal, whatever that new role is. It's really hard to ask for a company to give you something if you already achieved the goal but didn't communicate what that it creates a lot of gray area and can put you in a it reduces your position for negotiating, right, or having that buy-in, because
Yep.
if you can say, hey, if I go out and earn $10, can I have five? And it's like, if you can do that time over time, people are going to give you as many $5 as possible, right? Like, that's a really good return on your investment, but it's really hard to ask for that afterwards. I would say from my time collaborating with ARCO over the last few years, you guys do not take advantage of your people at all and are always reinvesting and willing to support them in their growth. You're rooting for them to succeed. And it's why I think you guys do such a great job retaining top talent. So Could you talk a little bit about, I guess I'll call it the ARCO Kool-Aid. Like, how do you attract talent and how do you get them up to speed so quick? As a young company, your team performs extremely well.
Yeah, no, it's our Kool-Aid is in the same way that Jay and I both came up through ARCO, is that you're really brought in as early as possible. So like for me, I started ARCO as a co-op. So I took a little bit of time off of school, a quarter off of school. I went to an all engineering school in Indiana, and I took a quarter off of my spring year, my sophomore year. So whatever, a 10-week period of time, and went and worked at ARCO instead. So I did that through the whole summertime. So our goal is that we get people to come in as sophomores or juniors and do a co-op or just an internship, but co-op being a more elongated interview process, and bring them in so early and get them introduced to everything we do at ARCO. So, at ARCO, we do a lot of internal work prior to, we do a ton of internal work to get a number very, very close to a go-to-contract number. But we do all that work in-house before we go out to the market or before we engage design consultants. And so a lot of that upfront work is repetitive, not necessarily repetitive, but it's structured in the way that we've been able to kind of achieve it. There's set ways to go and design roof joists, and there's certain ways to design footings, and there's certain things you should look at from a site development program. Fire lines here, fire hydrant space at this. And so a lot of what we do is we educate, the younger people that are really doing a lot of production, which are typically the interns, to learn that stuff as quickly as possible, and then help us through the estimating process, through the buyout process with actual jobs we've won. And so we utilize a lot of our co-ops and interns as if they're APMs, assistant project managers that other companies would call it. And we use them, when they're 19, 20, 21 years old. And we do that for, call it one summer. And then very commonly we have people come back for a second summer. So they're back doing the same thing, maybe with a little bit more responsibility the second year. And by the time they even finish their co-op or their internship in between, call it their junior and senior year, they have an offer on the table to say, you're working at ARCO. We want you to work at ARCO, as soon as you graduate. Like, go have fun your senior year, but no, when you come in, we're going to expect a lot of you. And so a lot of that Kool-Aid is drank between while you're still in college. So a lot of people, when they come into ARCO, one, they understand the work ethic that it takes. I mean, our core value is, to treat people right and do the right thing, but to also work hard and play hard is another big component of what we do. And so, the work hard is obviously there, and we've trained people through the first couple of years to understand it's a lot of work, but that's when you're going to develop the most, is those first couple of years. And so by the time they come in as full-time, they've already had 2 summers of knowing what the work is going to look like and how much time it's going to take to achieve what they want to achieve. Yeah. But very commonly, they come in as, for a full-time employee, right out of college, and we're putting a job on their plate and saying, you're going to run this with oversight. Don't get me wrong, no one's put on an island, but it's a lot of drinking from a fire hose. But most people we hire, coming out of college or typically they're athletes in high school or played club sports in college, things like that. And that's the exact mentality that they want. They want to have a lot of responsibility. They want to know that if they're getting pushed to do something, that they're going to be rewarded for it. And so that's truly the Kool-Aid that we like to we like to administer.
There's two things your team does exceptionally well there is you take young people, you have a plan, right? There's an onboarding process and there's a training program. There's things there's competencies you want them to build, and you have a plan on how you're going to give them exposure to those, and they develop them quickly because you had a training program so they actually can learn.
Yep.
And then the second thing is you give them a lot of, let's say, responsibility or autonomy, and giving them an opportunity to run a job like very quickly. So training, and then also like an opportunity to contribute back to the team, like that's immediately fulfilling and rewarding as an entry. One of the things everybody's looking for when they start their career is like a sense of belonging and worth. And like, talk about a confidence builder, how much momentum that's creating in the company. And every single person that comes in and they're seeing people 1, 2, 3 years in being extremely successful running their own projects, I think is like an amazing feat. And it's not something most companies skip the training piece because they don't have time to do training. But if you think about, if you're able to create training and then get such high level production and retain talent or attract talent because they can be so successful so quickly, like what better momentum is there over 10, 20, 30 years of business? And it's evident, like at 5.5 billion, ARCO's been doing this for a long time.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, what we talk about all the time is that your growth here is based on merit. It's not based on tenure. So, that's our whole goal, is that you put people in the position to succeed, and you give them all of the information, that we've developed over time and consolidated into easier to digest. We've created online programs, and we've hired a ton of really super smart go-getter people kind of on the learning and development and onboarding and HR side. And they've really helped us consolidate a lot of that information and focus it to what people need to be doing in the first 60 days, 90 days, 180 days, 360 days, that kind of stuff. And so since then, we've been able to kind of say, all right, this is what you guys should focus on overall. But if you want to take what you should know in 360 days and learn it in 180 days and develop develop yourself that much quicker, we're all for it.
Yeah, hoorah, right? I love that.
Exactly.
There's nothing, there's no better example like this entire conversation than you and Jason. I mean, you said you essentially started full time in 2015. Were given the opportunity to move to New England, launch a branch office, which like in most companies, giving the opportunity to someone 3-4 years into their career is unheard of, would never even consider that. And you guys, from 2018 to today, you've grown from zero to, is it about 320 million in revenue just in New England alone? Is that right?
Yeah, we'll do a little bit less than that, but overall through all of New England, yeah, it's approaching 300.
300 million. So 0 to 300 in a little bit over 3.5 or 4 years. And that's when, like, that is like the beauty of investing in talent and not holding somebody's career, not having a fixed schedule on someone's career, right? Like, don't tie it to tenure, tie it to capacity and opportunity.
Yeah. Exactly.
And I love that. So let's talk a little bit about the strategy. So I've heard in the industrial world, you guys obviously you do a lot of tilt up distribution centers, cold storage, like tilt wall construction, large warehouses. That is like your bread and butter at ARCO. You've been doing it for a long time. And that market became really sexy over the last 5-10 years with all the e-commerce, right?
Yep.
So it's a good business. And in New England, we've heard of ARCO being awarded projects because the equity that is investing in the deal wants ARCO to be a part of that. Do you know how that actually happened? Like, how does the equity, the money side of investing, they're not the developer, they're the people the developer's going to get money from. They know ARCO and they want you to, if they're going to invest in the job, they want ARCO to be on it. Like, how did that happen?
We've been very, very fortunate, over the last, especially the last, call it 15 years, as a lot of these offices have opened up, to develop relationships with other ARCO offices that develop good relationships with developers, and then those developers develop good relationships with equity partners, and those equity partners may have been isolated to whatever, call it the Philly region, and that's where all their equity was going in originally. And then it started to move north, and it went into New York, and then it moved into Massachusetts and Connecticut, Connecticut into Massachusetts and that kind of stuff. So we've been able to even help other ARCO offices, and other ARCO offices help us by just being the common denominator in some of these projects. Of we were successful in this project from an equity, or from a construction side, but from the equity side, they look at it and they say, hey, you guys are on time and on budget. So whether they know a developer or don't, the equity still wants to put their money into a successful project. So a lot of times what you'll see is that equity partner may be the common denominator now, different developer that we haven't done any business with, but they say, hey, ARCO is doing a lot of work up here. We want those guys to be part of the project. And so then, that's been a good way that we've met quite a few developers up here that maybe haven't historically we've done a lot of work with. They've, had, whether it be their preferred general contractors or quite frankly, and especially in the last, call it 3 years, really COVID and everything else, as retail, giants, developers that only did retail, they only did whatever it may be, started to realize, hey, I could go and permit this as industrial and be more than successful. So some of those guys that we hadn't really ever discussed with or talked through, strategy, what design build could bring to them, because we really just don't do a whole lot of retail. We started to really be able to educate those people, and those people are sharing a lot of the equity partners that some of our bigger traditional industrial partner developers were utilizing as well. So it's kind of been a little bit convoluted in how it's worked. I mean, some of it's been we've developed good relationships with equity partners. They bring us to certain projects and things like that. Others have been developers that haven't been necessary, that are newer to the industrial side. We're doing a lot of the upfront educating, helping them through the permitting side, helping them through, again, like I mentioned earlier, like site access and flow. And we have an in-house architecture group called GMA. They do a ton of site planning and things like that to help. Dock apron should be this deep, truck traffic and access should be this much deeper, all that kind of stuff. And so the more we've worked with those guys, and then they come and say, hey, this is going to be permitted, we're able to even bring equity partners to the table as well and say, hey, guys, we have a perfect group that we want to bring to the table here, that this is their bread and butter industrial. They know how to go get this thing permitted. They're willing to finance these deals. We'll make the introduction. You guys can take it from there.
Yeah, and when you're going in and competing, say I'm a developer and I want to build an industrial building, why am I coming to ARCO versus maybe a traditional design bid build process? Like, what is your value proposition to the developer and that equity partner that seems to trust you so much?
Yeah, it's the true design build method that, we talked about people drinking the ARCO Kool-Aid. I mean, we've drank the design build Kool-Aid for a long time. and really where we're at with it is we love to have as much responsibility as we can through the entire process and accept that risk associated with it. So in the design build, what's that?
Are you taking risk off the table? Is that like a big part of the conversation?
That's exactly right. So it's taking risk from the developer and us inheriting it, and just know that that's a part of our business model. So, in true design build fashion, like I mentioned earlier, we say you bring it from square one. So a developer says, hey, I got this plot of land. It was originally zoned for residential or retail. By right, we could also do industrial. So let's look at it from here. That's where we love to be involved. And from our process, that's where we bring the most value. We'll work with GMA or civil engineer and lay out the site. And then from there, we need 4 to 6 weeks to go price it just based on that information. We'll work with an H&O. We'll work in-house to develop preliminary structural plans, to develop overall value engineering ideas. Look at, is it allowed to be a 36-foot clear building? Does it need to be? It can be 40-foot clear. It can be 32. What's the overall max building height based on zoning? So we'll get involved in that early, and all that process happens really kind of on the if-come. It's kind of a part of our business to do that. Yep. So we're not saying, hey, before I'd even touch anything, here's a $50,000 fee that you guys need to pay us. There's certainly times that needs to happen. If we're going to go use an architecture group to go develop renderings and planning and zoning materials, of course there may be a fee up front, but the majority of the time,
design services.
That's exactly right. And so. The rest of the time, though, when we get involved, we want to take all of it develop as much preliminary information as we have that we know is not necessarily super conservative, but conservative the fact when we go hire an H&O to design it, we can get very, very tight on uplift requirements and panel thicknesses that aren't whatever. This thickness, they're a little bit thinner because they're based on this. And
Because
so
you're taking the risk, right? So if a panel thickness went from whatever 7.25 to 9.25, like you're eating all of that concrete for the entire building because you took
it's our risk, exactly. And it's if we messed up, it's on us. But what we want to do is we would like to be so involved so early in a project that when we go and we give an owner a number, obviously today's world's a little bit difficult with material cost escalations and some of these delays associated with the supply chain. But our whole business has been based on give us the 4 to 6 weeks to go price something. We will give you a number that does not change unless you make changes, add, deduct, I'm sorry, as the developer, Mr. Developer, if you make changes, adding it, the number may go up. If you say, hey, I don't want to do these many dock doors, the number will go down. But everything else that we give you based on a performance specification, that is what we owe you. So again, whether we assumed it was a 10-inch panel and it's a 12-inch panel, that's on us, not on them.
And if I put my developer or investor hat on, if I have a concept, I locked up a piece of land and I start talking to ARCO, in 4 to 6 weeks, I essentially have a GMP that I can raise money against and get a debt partner on with a trusted like national company who delivers these buildings faster than anybody, right? What's that giving me? That's giving me predictability of my capital. I no longer, like whenever there's unknowns, we have to like hold on and be more conservative with our capital, right? Which means we're not allocating the next dollar because we don't know if we're going to need it. You guys give investors and developers predictability of their capital when you're able to do that.
We do our absolute best. And if there is risk on the table, call it civil plans or we don't know the civil plans just based on, the civil engineer's been involved even earlier than us and they're working through permitting and things like that. Things may change, get added based on Concom's approvals, planning boards, whatever it may be. That obviously is a risk that that developer is still inheriting, but we're going to try to do our best to eliminate that risk or to manage that risk of, hey, if the civil engineer says it's got to all be underground detention, the first thing that we do is we say, what's the most economical way to do this? And so instead of just saying it's what's on the plans, we're still trying to fill in those gaps, even if it's something that we don't fully control, even if it's not something that's fully under ARCO.
Yeah, but you're taking responsibility there, right? If there's fee exposure on the job, you identify it and put a range, a rough order of magnitude based on option A, B, and C that could potentially happen, right? You said define a range. So you fix the GMP and then you identify the fee exposure.
That's exactly right.
It's limiting risk. It's giving them predictability of cash. They have to be, there's less volatility in that final number.
Yep.
Something ARCO in the last few years, they were privately owned previously, and they recently transitioned to an ESOP. Could you tell the group what is an ESOP and what did that mean for all the employees?
Yeah, ESOP is an employee stock ownership program that pretty much makes the entire company owned by 100% by our employees. So we transitioned from a much smaller group of individual shareholders to switching and saying we're going to open it up and every single person that's benefiting the business is also going to be a shareholder in the business. And there's obviously a lot that goes into it on kind of the tax and the financial side, but overall what it did is we said every single person that is allowing this business to grow will reap the benefits of the business growing. And it was an unbelievably amazing decision that myself and Jason were very fortunate to be beneficiaries of, that everyone at ARCO, but based on a very select group of shareholders that have been involved with ARCO since '92, made a very unselfish decision to do that and to keep the company still within ARCO's control. Sometimes when companies get so big and people want to have an exit, there's a lot of other options to get out of it, whether you sell it to private equity or you do certain different things. But they said, no, we want to keep it here. We want to keep the culture the same. We want to keep our model very, very similar. And that was the best route. And it was an unbelievable decision. I tell people all the time, it was the most unselfish decision I think I've ever seen a company make. But you go and you look at all the people that helped make that decision. It was not surprising at all.
Wow. Yeah. I love hearing stuff. I love hearing about like ownership transition success stories. And I think an ESOP is a widely misunderstood like opportunity to transition a company to their people. And when I think of ARCO, like the training, the vision, like everything you do operationally and culturally, like puts everybody that just bought into this ownership, right, as an ESOP or in that ownership transition, like the team of ARCO is well positioned to succeed, whether that current owner, the founder is involved or not, right? Because they've created a company that can continue to grow organically. It's an understood.
Exactly.
ESOPs are going to be really hard, or let's say the small business where everything stems off of the owner or one or two people at the top of the business when they go to transition, but everybody else in the company doesn't understand the business. It's really hard to put them in a position to succeed. So them buying out the company or even in an ESOP, they might struggle as an organization if they weren't a very balanced organization to begin with. So I give ARCO, everyone at ARCO, a lot of credit for creating such a balanced organization. I talk about that a lot. You can't scale a business if you're not balanced across all market sectors. And when I say that, it's planning, leadership, sales, marketing, people, operations, finance, and legal. Right? When you're balanced across all 8 of those functions, you can really scale and you can identify what's the next obstacle or the next hurdle I have to address to be able to grow healthily. And again, ARCO's got that all figured out. It's great to see.
Yeah.
Have you noticed a difference in like the buzz or how people operate at the company now that it is an ESOP? Has that helped you attract new employees?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I will say, people that are in the business, if we're hiring from another company or someone's looking to move or whatnot, that they're more well versed in it. Obviously some people are moving construction companies where they're coming from an ESOP. And so they understand the benefits, they understand the growth. So a lot of what we're talking about is to them is the growth opportunity. I would also say, a ton of our hires that we make, especially myself and Jason in this office, are people out of school, like we mentioned, through the co-op program and the internship program, all of that. They have been educated on ESOP programs too. So, even the younger generation, as much as people want to complain about them, they do understand, what the benefit of the ESOP program is. So when we bring it up and we talk about it, and the growth of the business, the more you add to the business, the more, you reap those benefits. A lot of the younger people are also really, really gung-ho on understanding that and being a part of that process too.
That's great to hear. I'd love to hear that. So if we look ahead, what's next for ARCO New England? Like where's ARCO New England in the next 5 years?
We're going to keep growing as fast as we possibly can, hiring the best talent, developing the greatest talent that we have already internally, making people that are currently in the business, making them leaders, making them manage more people, manage different parts of the business. Myself and Jason are going to continue to try to educate and empower people as we hire them and put people in positions to succeed, whether that be, assigning them or trying to not silo necessarily, but direct them into maybe a different market type. Maybe it's, especially in New England, this, Renz, but it's, the GMP life science manufacturing side of it. We've really kind of uncovered an animal there that we feel like we fit in perfectly. Our model really, really does. And so some of it was pretty organic through some of our developer, clients and some industrial projects that we're working on that started to shift more towards the light manufacturing and then also the life science side. We believe that that's going to be a big market for us and that we're going to focus heavily on it. It may be a little bit more volatile, just based on heavy supply, and then, maybe for a year it's quiet and then maybe it's heavy again. We're not exactly sure as we just come into it.
Sure.
Industrial has historically been pretty, until recently it was exponential growth, but for the most part it was pretty standard. Everyone, it was kind of continual growth and we felt pretty comfortable about that. But from the life science side, we think we're going to really push hard into that. And then, as we grow our office, we're able to try to find different, maybe smaller business avenues that we haven't really looked at, maybe look into more of a TI division and growth it throughout there, that are smaller projects, but people can run more of them. So we're trying to analyze that, pretty much on a quarterly or by year, every half year, try to look at that. and see, who in our team currently do we think is a good fit for that. And then, in the same way, when we go and hire people, we're always constantly thinking of like, let's put them with the project manager or someone in our business that we think they align with, personality wise, whatever it may be, and then let that person that's training them have some ownership for their growth, and say, hey, one of our best project managers here, young guy, David Rufflart and John Diaz, both of those guys have people that are working under them, and we're telling these guys that you guys need to take ownership in the people that are working under you, their development. And in reality, that's the leadership mentality that ARCO's always had, which is you're always training you're training the person to put you out of your job so you can go take the next job. You can go take another position higher up in the company or allow the company to grow, in a different direction because you've put someone to do your job. Now you go do something else. That's where I see over the next, call it 5 years. The number wise, I don't think it's going to be the same exact growth that we've had. I mean, we've gone, like you said, 0 to call it 250 or 300 million in 4 years, 4.5 years. Do I see that continue to growth? I hope so.
Sure.
I certainly think there's no limit that we could put on our overall growth that way. I just think it's going to be different than what it was. I think it's not going to be strictly industrial like it was. I think maybe we'll continue to do a similar amount of industrial, but maybe our life science grows, and that's what starts making up that delta to get to the next 100 million and the next 100 million.
Yeah. All great. I love that you guys look at your strategy. It's so important to pick your head up and see where you're going. When you're growing that fast and you have all the work commitments and you're hiring and you're scaling, it's really easy to get caught with your head down, right? Like just doing the day-to-day working in the business, putting out the fires, but creating the space twice a year to make sure you're picking your head up, thinking strategically, what markets, what type of revenue is going to help us continue to grow over the next few years. Such an important role. And give a shout out. Parker Snyder on your team's done such an amazing job in the life science CGMP world. I have no doubt that you guys are going to continue to grow that part of the business. It's already hitting off. And like you said, there's so many synergies to what ARCO does extremely well in the industrial distribution space and the CGMP phase 3, like biomanufacturing world. Yep. There's a lot in transit. But like you said, it's not as defined of a project on day one, right? It's really hard to give an all-in GMP for an entire GMP facility.
Exactly. And that's something, just to hit on it, Parker and Jason have done an amazing job. And Parker really has taken a lot of ownership and understanding that model better and working with H&O. And you guys have touched on a lot of that type of work and understanding floor loads and things like that. So understanding the structures and how it all combines and what type of user wants a higher floor load, which one can accept a lower floor load. And so that's exactly it. I mean, and Parker's a perfect example of someone that came in from a different mentality of a company. Similar, I mean, he ran work, did an amazing job, amazing projects, did some design build where they were involved, but our model just suited him a little bit better. And quite frankly, we said, what do you think is kind of next, Parker? And he's a huge believer that this is the next step, for not just our business, but New England in general, as we continue to grow. And so he's taken that on and developing, procedures and developing statistics and help to better, educate people that are newer to the business. And then at that point, like we were talking about, we're having groups come into the bit. Our goal is that as different developers, different end users come into that market type, that they're coming to us as not just a builder, but a consultant. And then, we're bringing on, your guys' group and some other groups that we live and breathe this. So we're not asking the owner to tell us, what do you want? We're telling you what we think you guys should have. And then they tell us, yeah, we think we should do this or should do that.
The perfect example of this is the mechanical loads. Like in a lot of buildings, mechanical loaded areas they can be very quickly defined as 150 pounds a square foot live load design. So that means we got to design a floor to support 150 pounds per square foot of mechanical equipment. In small areas, let's say on a high rise where a lot of your mechanical equipment that service the whole building are kind of consolidated in one area, those loads make a lot of sense. It gives you the flexibility to move equipment around in that floor area, but they're generally smaller defined areas relative to the whole building. And when you look at these CGMP facilities, you can have a 100,000 square foot roof, a 200,000 square foot roof to spread all this mechanical load. And so you see a lot of times people will put these massive dunnage frames and call it 150 pounds a square foot design capacity when the actual load is under 25 pounds a square foot when you look at the actual area that you're supporting. So we're able to, like, right out of the gate, you guys jump into this world and we're collaborating, and we already found an opportunity to make this building more efficient and more appropriate for design the building for what it actually needs to do, not for what like what has just historically been done, right? Like don't assume because it was done yesterday that it's the right thing to do today. Like turn over every rock.
Yeah.
Awesome. So in closing, I'd like to bring two questions to you. I know you're clearly an avid learner and a go-getter. So what's maybe a book, a podcast where something was like, it really left you with this aha moment that really changed the way you thought or led? It kind of redirected your career.
I would say I'm not a huge podcast listener, and unfortunately, I'm not a big book reader.
Well, now with design development, you're in.
Yeah, exactly. I would love to get into more. I say that every time until I go, and it's like by the end of the day, your brain just zapped. But I would say, so ARCO, we always talk about raving fans, and there's a great book called Developing Raving Fans that ARCO hands out to every single person that starts, and they tell you to read it in the first month that you're at ARCO, and I usually read it about once a year just to try to understand it. It's a book that just talks about, it's I don't even know how old it is, maybe 70s, 60s, and so some of the things it talks about are a little bit antiquated, the experiences, and it talks about like a car shop, and it talks about like a Sears or that type of department store. But the overall idea of customer service and creating someone that you're always going a little bit above and beyond. If someone's doing something great and you go a little bit greater than that, then that's the raving fan you're trying to develop. And so, not just saying, hey, I'm doing a good job, you want to do a great job. And if you're doing a great job, you need to do an even better job. And so that was a big thing that, ARCO truly harps on. And, we always use the cliche, create raving fans. But that's truly, very fortunately how Jason and I have gotten our position is that, we treated every client and everyone that comes to us, we try to, and, we've been successful with the majority of them we want you guys to come to us, and we want to have you guys walking away being our biggest billboard saying ARCO should do all of this work. And, we do that organically. We don't do it by being fake, or we don't do it by, trying to force that on. We just truly say, we want to understand your business. We want to make you a raving fan of what we're doing for you. And so that's, like I said, I can't stress enough that that's the type of stuff that ARCO gives every single employee, and then says, read it, understand it, love it, eat it up. And if you do that, you're going to be successful.
I love raving fans concept. At the end of the day, if you make your customers happy, it can overcome a lot of organizational hurdles, right? It can overcome a lot of flaws in any day-to-day. If you can do a little bit extra to make them happy and change their experience. Experience equals expectations minus reality. So if you can make their reality a little bit better than their expectations, you're going to come out with a great experience, right? That's going to create a raving fan. And honestly, you could probably roll that right in. My other question I like to do is, what's one piece of advice you have for emerging leaders other than creating raving fans? Let's say somebody, an emerging leader that's like either new to ARCO or new to the construction industry. Like, what are the key things that you have like for advice for them to really like grow and capture that opportunity?
Yeah, it's funny. So, background, Renz and I have been trying to do this and Jason too. Unfortunately, Jason couldn't make today, but for like 3 months trying to have this meeting. And
I'll never forgive him.
Yeah, exactly. He's subpar, so it's all good.
Face for radio, they say.
That's right, exactly. Just kidding. But so we actually just went to West Point and did a leadership training there, and amazing. It was the Thayer Leadership Institute, and it was great. There's extremely successful Army leaders there that were doing the trainings and everything. And one thing I walked away from this, and I've kind of always inherently known this, but just based on playing sports and being captains of teams and things like that. But pretty much what they had said, and the best advice I can ever give to anyone that is a leader and being a developing leader is that you as a leader is not you singularly winning over the team and doing everything, and you're the main point of contact on everything. A leader is developing other leaders, and that's the most important thing that could happen. So if you feel like what you're doing at your company is the most important thing, and that what you should be the one that's receiving all of the praise, and everyone that's doing all this work for below you is just doing their job, you're really not realizing the actual impact that you have on all the people that are working under you. If you're giving those people responsibility and you're telling them they're doing a good job, and when they're not doing a good job, you're direct with them and say, hey, this needs to change. We need to work on this. I'm here to help you. That's really where I think myself and Jason have really been able to grow personally and as a business, is saying, we want everyone, sitting in meetings and looking everyone in their eyes and saying, we want you guys to have our jobs. We want you guys to ask questions. We want you guys to challenge us and hold us accountable as much as we're holding you accountable. And, I just see that from some people, and you read articles and things like that, and you see some of these, it's almost like, a single leader and that's it. And the way I've looked at it is, ARCO is very horizontal. We have a lot of leaders. I have, a lot of bosses in reality. There's a couple of people we direct report to, but in reality, we're working for a lot of other people in the business. And, so I can't go and lead every single person all the time. It's just not the way that it is. But if I'm developing other people below me to go and direct, their people that they're working with, it's been the most successful way. And it's really kind of been like the most kind of relieving way to feel like I don't need to go to bed every single night. And I'm thinking, holy shit, I got to make every single decision that there is to be made. You really got to empower other people and say, if I want to lead, I got to develop you to be a leader too.
That is incredible advice to end out today's episode. I have a saying that really goes along with that piece of advice. It's a company's ability to grow is directly correlated to its ability to develop leaders, right? And the only way to do that, like you said, it's not one person at the top making the decision. It's like creating a culture of leaders where people are trying to develop leaders below them, right? It's
Exactly.
truly a culture. And you and everyone, you, Jason, everybody at ARCO has done such an amazing job at creating that culture. So I have nothing but the faith in your team to achieve your goals over the next 5 years. I know we're going to be rooting for you. And George, I can't thank you enough for creating the time to talk with me today. Can't wait to share it with everybody else. Thank you.
Absolutely, Renz. I greatly appreciate and love what you're always doing, and especially everything on LinkedIn and with this and our conversations. Just I think you're a huge proponent of what makes New England construction and development good, and appreciate all that you do as well.
Appreciate you, George.
Take it easy, man.
Everyone, I hope you enjoyed today's conversation. Thank you so much for listening. If you found any value in this conversation, please like, share, and comment so we can get the word out to more people. It's the only way these communities grow. We're going to really change the industry. We're a growing community. Would love you to be a part of it. Please connect with us. We're going to be on all major social platforms, LinkedIn, Instagram. So all those links will be in the show notes. Enjoy the day.